Well, we're here today with our guest, Brian Doerksen, and I'm so excited and so honored to have you here. It's a part of your featured weekend to honor you on your birthday for all the years and all the work and all the gifts that you've given to the body of Christ. And we just hope that you're blessed by this and as much as you've blessed all of us. And I know that so many of your songs have had such a huge impact on my own Christian walk. I've been listening to your songs as long as I can remember, it seems, from Refiner's Fire to Come Now It's Time to Worship and Faithful One. And so many of your songs have almost become like anthems for the Christian church because they've impacted the worldwide church, the universal church, not just here in America or Canada or the English-speaking world, but they've gone beyond that. And I was just wondering, before we talk about your songs and how they started or what they mean to you, I was wondering if you could just kind of tell us what it looks like in a day in your life.
Day in the life?
Yeah. And where you're from and where did your Christian walk start?
Well, that's an interesting question to answer because I still live on I call it the little patch of earth that I moved into as a 4-year-old boy, almost 55 years ago. My parents bought a little 5-acre piece just outside of Abbotsford, British Columbia. So just north of the border into Canada, about 45 minutes east of Vancouver, BC. And we had just moved back from Paraguay, where my dad had taken a 2-year teaching assignment because Paraguay is the land of his birth. He was born among a German Mennonite community there. Oh, wow. And then ended up in Canada as a teenager, ended up meeting my mom. And but anyway, so coming back to this little piece of land, like you talk about like a day in the life, it's so interesting because, in fact, just the other day I was doing a podcast with an African host in Nigeria, and they were asking, okay, describe where you are. And I'm describing for them, and I'm looking out the window and I'm going, that tree I remember climbing in as a boy.
Oh, wow.
This is the place where I grew up. I had my first encounters with Christ. I had my first sense. I hear talk about the whispers of God. This is where I wrote some of my first songs, and this is where I'm still today writing songs, and I think place matters. I think we've become very transient in our modern world, and yet I think all of us long for roots, and for some reason we have been blessed with this gift of the Doerksen family of being on this little patch of earth for that long. And so as I travel and as I get the chance to go different places of the world, I always come back to the same little place, and it grounds me literally and metaphorically in every way. A day in the life at the Doerksen household is actually, it's very rich in the sense that because of our special needs son living with us, and we have 2 special needs sons, which is maybe a longer story than I can tell right now. But our youngest son, our baby, is 25. He has 3 words: no, me, mama. But I do all of his care and get him ready for the day in the morning, and I do all of his care in the evening. So first of all, that's one of the frames of my day, often I'm awake before him, but I'm listening for the sounds, as I'm in the living room and I'm maybe started working on something or reading something, and I'm listening. Is he stirring, and then I get him up, and then I make sure he's got a drink and make sure he uses the restroom, and, and he can kind of manage some of that on his own, but he needs some of it. He needs help. And then I make sure he's dressed and he's And I make sure his lunch is packed for his day program, and I feed him breakfast. I just go through all of that. So by the time, and then a little, we call it an Abbotsford handy dart, like that helps with special needs adults, comes and picks him up.
Yeah.
And, I hear the beep, beep, as it's turning around in our driveway. There's all these markers, right? You talk about a day in the life, and okay, Isaiah, it's time, it's time to go. And off he goes. And he's always he's cheerful, usually. Like he's kind of hopping and making his sounds, which are the soundtrack to my life, really. And then away he goes. And then it's into, I write songs, but I think, my work, my day-to-day life is often about event prep. I'm speaking at a conference. I'm doing a keynote talk. I'm teaching some workshops. I'm doing a set of music. I'm working on prepping a Christmas event, or I'm working on a new recording, and I'm finishing up a lyric on a song. Like all of those types of things fill my day. What else can I say? Oh, and a day in life, I make chai from scratch. So I grind the spices. It takes me about an hour in the afternoons. So I get to a place, so I've, you're doing more brain work, more creative work, more, you're on your laptop, you're on the telephone, you're on a Zoom call, and then I get to a place mid-afternoon where I want to just something that's not brain work. And about 20 years ago, I discovered at a restaurant, famous restaurant in Vancouver called Vidge's, where Vikram Vidge would walk around to the customers as they're arriving with a steaming platter of steaming chai. And I'd had chai at like Woods or Starbucks or whatever, and it's like from a mix, and it's okay and stuff. But I took one sip, and I looked at him like, what is this? Like, it's like everything is real in it. There's nothing artificial.
I don't guess I've ever had real chai then.
And so I learned to make it, and then I made it my own. And I have Indian friends who come from India, where they have chai every day, and they say my chai is the gold standard. Like it's their favorite chai. And I have other friends. Anyway, so chai is a thing late afternoon. It's a way of starting to wind down. And Joy, if there's nobody else around, then it's just Joyce and me, my wife and me. We have chai. And how did your day go? And did anything interesting happen today? Did you talk to anybody? And then on it goes into meal prep and the evening and then eventually caring for Isaiah and making sure he gets his exercise. We put him on the treadmill, and I manage that, and then I give him a bath, and then I make sure he's all ready for bed, and then I tuck him into bed at 9:30, and then I'm usually ready to head up myself. So that's you asked about a day in the life. Yeah. There's creative work. There's all kinds of things, and framed with caring for our son, which really grounds me.
Wonderful. So how did your walk with the Lord begin?
Well, on this little piece of earth, I remember, of course, like my parents were churchgoers, and my dad led the singing at church and stuff. But I think as a boy and into my early teen years, I was kind of like, I was drawn, but I was also restless, and I wasn't connecting with, I think, the music that was being used. It was very traditional music, hymns, organ, piano. And I have melody and words in me. I think ever since I was a boy, I would hear things as it would, somewhere, and I would, oh, what's that? So, but what happened was, right around just as I was hitting into my teens, I started having these experiences, and outside our house, there's a little hill, And especially in the summertime, at the end, towards the evening, I would lie on the hill under the ginkgo biloba tree. Now, the ginkgo tree is a very special tree to Japanese people, and it was planted by a man named Mr. Kawano, who built our house in 1937. And then there's a whole crazy story about the backstory of how I was able to actually go to Mr. Kawano's son and ask his forgiveness for what the Canadian government did to him in World War II, because the house was taken from them and never returned. And we, the Doerksen family that ended up buying it bought it multiple owners later. But as a boy, I played in the attic and I saw the Japanese newspaper clippings, and I remember asking my dad, why is there Japanese newspaper clippings in the walls in our attic? And he started telling me the story, and I remember hearing the part about forced relocation and moving them away from the coast. And I remember thinking, oh man, what did this Kawano family do to deserve that?
Right.
Because they are of Japanese origin, and the Japanese government in Japan goes crazy and declares war. But they were just peace-loving people who were farming this little, anyway.
Yes.
So the ginkgo I know what started this, the ginkgo tree. So I would lie under the ginkgo tree as a boy, and I would hear the wind whistle through the leaves, flutter the leaves, and then I would start getting these impressions. I call them the whispers of God, like, I love you. I have a plan for you. I made this all. Would you follow me? Would you trust me? These kinds of little invitational whispers. And as I started to put things together, and then as a 15-year-old, I was in high school, I was a high school junior, and I was a basketball player, and I was good. I was a guard, I was fast, and I was a great shot from the outside. And I was kind of, I had things kind of mapped out. I started mapping out, I'm going to do, I'm going to do this for high school, and I'm going to go and play for da-da-da-da,
Yeah.
And one night in my bedroom, which is crazy because that was my bedroom as a boy, we ended up doing a renovation to our top floor, and it's now our master bedroom, and we expanded it a bit and added some things. But it's just like, again, it's like place, right?
Yes.
And I had this profound encounter with Christ that night that changed the course of my life. And I was trying to pray about, I can't even remember what the specifics were, just a fresh prayer of surrender and kind of like, God, whatever you want of my life. And all of a sudden this presence came into the room like a fire, and I describe it as like electrical current, like my whole body was coursing with electrical energy. And I thought at first that the fire, this fiery presence was there to judge me and to because I'm a sinner and I know my own faults, until I realized a few moments into it that the fire was love. And that it was complete acceptance. It wasn't judgment of me, but it was accepting me, and it was redirecting me. And it was like the desire to play basketball just went away it was like a vapor. It was just like gone. And I had this desire to pick up a guitar and to start to sing. And I hadn't really, I was drawn to music, but I hadn't made music, And I knew the basics of guitar, but I just picked up the guitar and just started to sing. And in a sense, I've never stopped since that night. And I had to kind of go to my coach and basketball coach and say, I think this season is done for me. And my friends are all looking at me like, Doerksen, what are you talking about? You're an all-star basketball player. You need to do. I said, I'm so sorry, but I've had a profound experience, and I think I have a calling to do something different. So they thought I was crazy.
Yeah.
You know.
So even as a boy, when you're laying under that ginkgo tree, did you know that what you were experiencing was God, His voice? Did you have that
Well,
understanding?
I think I did because I had enough context, again, because I'm in a Christian family.
Yes.
And so I'm attending church, and I'm hearing, they can talk, they can tell stories, from the book of Isaiah or the Psalms, the heavens declare the glory, and then night after night they pour forth speech. So I think I knew enough that nature, the natural created world, is kind of like God's cathedral.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's like, I know that once in an interview way back, Amy Grant talked about how she would experience God's presence whenever she would go outside or like in a walk in the forest, and nobody was interpreting it for her because it was like she would put herself in that. And I always think of that like it's like God's cathedral, right? Like when you go under a starry sky, or go through a walk in the forest, or go stand at the ocean's edge and feel and hear the breakers coming in. There's just something about the natural world that just is communicating about its maker, but we're not always tuned into that.
Right. I remember as a child too, experiencing encounters with the Lord, but I didn't have anybody to interpret that for me. So I had no concept of, I just knew that I felt loved and accepted, and that I could pour out what was in my heart, little 8-year-old child, but still I was able to pour that out in that direction, whereas I couldn't necessarily with any other living person.
Right. And I think your experiences actually happens a lot, and it's kind of like what happened to me, because I'm a shy, introverted person by nature. And so I would have an experience, and what I was experiencing was this love. I was experiencing wonder.
Yes.
Like, and just, it's almost like your eyes and your heart are just being opened up, and part of the response is gratitude. Part of the response is simply that, what I sing at the end of my song, Creation Calls, I believe. Like, there's this response, like, oh yeah, I believe. Like, I believe in you. Like, this is real.
Yeah. Even
though some people may just think it looks like a kid just sitting there on the hillside talking to himself.
Yeah. Yes. I know what you mean. I don't think it was until I was an adult that I was able then to look back, even though I came to Christ as a child and, sought Him through my teenage years. It was so amazing that it took me into my adulthood before I understood that, oh, you were there. That was you all along the way. That wasn't just me talking to myself,
right.
That you were actually, your presence was actually there. And I had nobody, even though I grew up in a Southern Baptist church, I had nobody to tell me that was the presence of God.
Right. And I grew up in a Mennonite Brethren church, which is probably in some of its expressions not that different than a Southern Baptist church, some solid preaching, some solid traditional music, some structure, all of that. But the experiential part is not front and center in that kind of context. I mean, it's often viewed with some suspicion. And so, so you can feel like I'm having this experience, but maybe also alone, but because of the presence, not alone.
Not alone. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. I that just leads me into, no wonder you are a worshiper. No wonder that is what you do, because I think that's what worship is supposed to do, is connect us with that presence, to connect us in such a way that we can not only pour out praise, thanksgiving, gratitude, love, adoration, but that we can also receive that in that moment as well.
Well, I think the praise and the gratitude and the adoration starts because we've received something. You know what I mean?
Yes, because
It's
he
like
first loved us.
exactly like it's like, and I try sometimes to explain to people that serve in worship teams, and sometimes we can get all tied up in a knot about getting everything right and you know, these things we're going to do for God. And I just try and say, but actually, if we just take all of that and just let that all go, really it's simply, how does your heart want to respond to that love that you are being shown by God's presence? Respond, yes, sing some songs, but it's not dependent on our being amazing or being,
Technically correct. Yeah.
or being in tune or being in picking the perfect song list or everything. Like, we can make
Right.
it so much, we can get tied up in a knot about trying to do worship right. Whereas I think, you know, the love that we give is, we give because we were loved first. It's like that, you know, and this is kind of like how human beings, how we're designed. Like, what we are given, what input we are given, that's, we respond with. So that's why it's the saying goes, you know, hurt people, loved people, love people. You know, like, we respond to that which is initiated to us.
Yes.
Yeah.
The one of the things that I was, because just from your music and then other interviews that I've seen, and how your music has touched me over the years, one of the things that I was hoping to come out of this interview was, we at Graceway Radio, one of our slogan is pure worship, pure word, pure radio. In that we're trying to find and promote music, especially, that is Christ-centered, that will connect to listeners to having that experiencing the presence of the Lord, not just a good performance, a good song that tells about God, or maybe even is doctrinally sound necessarily, but songs that will promote worship, promote that connection. And how do you think that the Christian music industry, how do you think that has affected worship in church? Good, bad, for the, you know,
in so many ways, sometimes for good, sometimes for not so good, you know. And I think one of my observations, and, you know, I mean, it's an interesting dynamic, because I'm heading towards 59, which means I can see, you know, 60 on the horizon, and, you know, and then there's this magic supposed number 65, you're supposed to retire, and I go, good luck with that with me, you know, like, but I think in recent years, one of the things, my observations is, if we've exchanged intensity for intimacy. So what we've done is we've started to, like, practice intensity in a way, like, we take these songs and we sing them louder, and we try and sing them, you know, more intensely, to somehow bring God's presence down, when what is being offered to us all along is simply intimacy, which is heart to heart, face to face. We do not generate the presence.
Yes.
We respond in love, and our starting position is not, it's not this ramped up hype kind of like, oh, we're gonna, you know, we're gonna do this thing. No, it's actually a whisper. It's actually just coming and just being, letting God love you, and then as God loves you, you respond to that love, and you love back.
Yes. Yeah.
And so, you know, there, you know, like anything, like, there's trends, and there's, you know, different ebbs and flows with different people and artists. And, you know, worship music has become its own kind of industry, which I kind of get. some of those people that work in that part of music business and Christian music, they're trying to serve the church. They're trying to resource the church. But it can really quickly become this kind of like this anonymous funnel that is just more about the bottom line, about what's popular, about what sounds cool.
Mm-hmm.
And even I think like so many churches nowadays have become black boxes. You know, they're not a lot of windows.
Yeah.
They got a lot of lights. They got a bit of dry ice, smoke.
Yes.
They want to see. It's like a concert environment.
Yes.
And I'm like, I want, you know, recently I was at a church and it was just flooded with windows and natural light. I just stood there and I looked around and I turned to one of the guys and I just said, thank you. Thank you for keeping the windows open. Thank you for not having this crazy like sound and light system.
Yes.
Because for me, it's the natural world that most awakens that connection for me. Now, you know, like I also am a songwriting instructor and mentor. And so I mentor some of the, you know, next generation of songwriters in all genres, worship, but folk and other CCM. And I just also want to encourage them to write the songs that they're uniquely called to write. So they're not going to write songs that sound like my songs. They're going to write songs that sound like their songs. I just hope and pray that in the middle of all of that, we can keep that core value of intimacy. And you described it well before. And that was part of the thing when I just got my start, you know, when I wrote, Purify My Heart, Refiner's Fire, when I wrote Faithful One, when I wrote those, I Lift My Eyes Up, when I wrote my first batch of songs, you know, what was popular at that time was just kind of like praise songs about God.
Yes.
Songs that were really stacked with doctrine and all of these things. And it was always he and about, you know what I mean?
Yes, I know
you
exactly what you mean.
And I had this stirring in my heart as a young man. I have these experiences when I'm out in nature, and when I come to be with God's people, I want to take the essence of that experience and I want us to share it together as a group of people. So I started writing songs that were what you would call, in point of view, first person direct address.
Yes.
To God.
Yes.
I'm not going to sing about God. I'm going to sing to God. You know, Refiner's Fire. My heart's one desire is to be holy, set apart for you, Lord. You know, like that. You know, I lift my eyes up to, where does my help come from? My help comes from you, maker of heaven, creator of the earth. Oh, how I need you, Lord. You are my only hope. And that was my whole goal and foundation. And we've seen some of that ebb and flow, you know, in the trends of worship music, and it's ebbing away from that again and a little bit. And I just keep going. I don't know if anything is ever going to replace, even like I think of the old classic Laurie Klein, simple, I love you, Lord.
Yes.
And I lift my voice.
Yeah.
I mean, there it is,
yes.
right? You know what I mean? Like, so I wonder what, you know, I sometimes, okay, well, what will the next generation of songwriters, how will they take intimacy?
Will they?
And some of them will, and some of them just won't, because, you know, I say, you know, intensity sells well. It's like a commodity. It's like a hyped up experience.
Well, you can control and manufacture it.
Yes.
And you can't do that with intimacy.
No, and intimacy is like, exactly, like whether it's with your maker, it's the dialogue you have with your life partner, like all of those things, like those heart to heart moments. It's right. You can't manufacture. What you can do is respond to the love that's being shown you by loving back. And that's always been my dream and goal as a songwriter.
Yeah. And I thank you for that. And I thank you for remaining true to that, because it is something that it truly, like you said, it's trending, the industry's trending away from that. And it's harder and harder to find current music that is speaking to the Lord, is opening up that opportunity to fully express what we are receiving, and or at least for me, and I think that I'm one of those shy, introverted people too, and oftentimes words are hard for me to it's hard for me to express what I'm feeling in words. And when I can find a song, and which so many of yours have, when I can find a song that does that for me, it's freeing, and it just adds so much more richness to my experience. And that's one thing I'm so appreciative of what we've been able to accomplish with Graceway Radio is we're playing songs from every decade, and every different genre, not simply because we want a good mix, but there are songs in every, well, not metal rock, but just going to put that out there. But just about in every genre, there are songs that are speaking. At
but
that
you
level.
said something that's really beautiful, and that I want to underline, that I speak about to people over and over again, and the next generation writers. You talk about songs that speak for you.
Yes.
And again, a lot of Christian music becomes trying to speak to people. It's like preaching a sermon. And I try and tell songwriters, songs are not sermons.
Yes.
They are this gathering up of a few, and it's every song is only designed to say one thing too. That's the other thing. It's really, really important that you learn that as a songwriter. But so a song says one thing. And when we're writing a worship song, either personal or congregation, it has to speak for others in a way that, say, takes one theme or one aspect either of God or of what it means to try and live in the love of God, and then you put that into a song to be sung. And the dream is that it would speak for other people, because and the reality is this: there's a craftsmanship, there's a calling that it takes to do that. And you do it on behalf of people who don't have that gift and calling to write songs, so that because here's the thing, and why is this so important? Because music and the things we sing go into what I call our God-given backup hard drive. Okay? So when, let's say you've got, and they've done studies on this recently with Alzheimer's and dementia and stuff, when these kinds of conditions hit the human being, they forget. They forget even who their loved ones are, right? But they'll never forget. That's because it's the last thing to go in our brain is the things they have sung.
Yes. So,
crazy story about this with my father-in-law, because my father-in-law had a stroke, and this is about 10 years ago, and I was away on a trip, and he almost died, but he pulled through at this point, and he couldn't even recognize some of his family members as they entered the hospital room. 2 weeks later, I come into the hospital room. He looks up, looks at me, and goes, "To the river, I am." Wow. He didn't even know my name.
Wow.
But he knew my song. And
wow.
I try and encourage, songwriters, people who are worship leaders, people like you guys who work in radio and give people language through songs, that the work we do in providing songs for people is so incredibly important, and songs of meaning, and songs of depth, and songs of roots, because when people suffer, and what many people, everyone will suffer, not everyone will suffer, thankfully, dementia or Alzheimer's, but they're going to suffer something physically, mentally. They need songs to turn to.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I had this story from these people who who were kidnapped by extremists, and they were held in captivity for months. And they had no Bible. They had nothing except the clothes on their back. And they were fed, just meager things every day to keep them alive so that they could get their ransom for them. And they wrote to me after they got released because they wanted to thank me, because they said, in our minds, we created a captivity hymnal, songs we knew. Wow. We talk about the backup hard drive, and many of the songs were yours, like Faithful One and Hope of the Nations. And,
yes.
These songs that I had written,
wow.
they were the songs that kept their spirits going when they had nothing. And when you have nothing, you still have something.
You do.
Because you have what's in your backup hard drive.
You do.
You have the songs that are in your heart.
Well, that's truly making your songs our own.
Yeah.
That's what's, I think in that I would think as a songwriter, that would be like the ultimate goal. Is that you want people to actually own these songs.
And I have to own them first.
Yes.
And then that's
why they're not authentic.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And also, as I continue to go through my life, we talked about my age already. We won't talk about it again. But and I go through the changes and the challenges of different seasons of life. And as I continue to write, I'm also having to write songs that I need to survive, to live, to whatever word you want to use, this season of my life. And so I'm in a season now where I'm writing more songs than I've ever written in my life. I'm in the middle of recording a love songs album because I started to realize there's all these songs in the world about falling in love, and there's very few songs about staying in love.
Oh, yeah.
About a long, faithful, covenantal love. And Joyce and I are about to celebrate our 40th wedding anniversary. And there's so many young people that say, is marriage even worth it? Yes. So I want to put out a batch of love songs that say, and this is kind of a different kind of intimacy in a way. It's like the language of love between husband and wife. And I've played a few of these songs for some people, and they go, oh, that speaks for me. Because I've shared this relationship with my spouse for this many years, and that's what we've gone through, and that's, whatever. But I'm writing that, and I'm writing a whole bunch of new worship songs, and I'm my good friend and I were working on a Christmas movie musical, and we want to take the essence of the Jesus Christmas story and set it. So awesome. Like I'm writing the songs that I need in this season of my life for myself.
Yes.
And then I'm hoping that some of those songs will become songs for other people that they'll say, oh, you gave me words.
Yes. Yeah. Wonderful. So speaking of writing and being very productive in this time of your life, I noticed on your website that you shared a time in your life that wasn't so.
Yeah.
In fact, you said you called it a prolonged winter of wordlessness after a devastating relational breakdown in the faith community that you helped found. And I was wondering, during which you didn't write any music for 5 years or so.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, since then you've been very busy, and you've, your albums, Grateful and The Heart of Christmas, have just won scads of awards, and you've written those since that time. And I was wondering, would you mind talking about that season?
Yeah. Oh, I would love to, because I think often, even in Christian contexts, we don't actually talk enough about some of the difficult times. And I think it's really important that people know that when they're going through that they're not alone, and there's not something wrong with them for going through stuff like that. So we had planted a church in 2006 in Abbotsford, and in 2010, a conflict started to emerge with one of the associate pastors, and I was the worship pastor leader at the time, and I tried to become the peacemaker between the senior pastor and the associate pastor. And I say I got creamed in the middle. I'm a sensitive person, and it turned out that the one individual that was partly sparking the conflict was truly, I think, a narcissist kind of person. There was no working it out really, because they just wanted to win. and they didn't care how many people they hurt in the process.
Mm-hmm.
And, and by this point, I'm so many years into, being a parent of a special needs son. I'm starting to see some things happening in the worship music industry that are troubling me.
Yeah.
There was just a bunch of things that came together, and I hit a wall. Kind of like, I feel like, you hit a wall at 50 miles an hour and it takes you a long time to recover.
Yeah.
And I lost my words. I couldn't write. I took a sabbatical from the church. And then 6 months later, I tried returning. 500 people had just kind of scattered to the wind, and I just couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah.
So I handed in my resignation. And I, bit by bit, I started being drawn to the Psalms, right? And so eventually I formed a group with some people called the Sheer Poets, and we started singing the Psalms. I couldn't write my own words, but I could sing the words from the Psalms, which I love. I call it the most emotionally healthy songbook the world has ever seen, because it has everything: praise, anger, sadness, gratitude, So, and what I did, maybe the Dutch German part of me that likes organization said, I'm going to just sing them in sequence. I'm not, because I'm so confused right now, this season of my life, I'm not going to cherry pick just the ones I think will help me. I'm just going to start 1, 2, 3, So that was, and I think doing that, and we ended up recording 3 albums, and we recorded Psalm 1 to 30, and we arranged them. And I think that restarted.
Wonderfully done, too.
Oh, thank you. I think it restarted my songwriting engine eventually. But I also got to the point where I thought, maybe I'm done. Maybe that this part of Brian is finished. And then came Scars on His Hands, which I don't know if you know that story, but I was in a classroom setting. I was teaching a group of young people, and I brought in a guest speaker, and she said at one point during her talk, she said, "You do know that the resurrected Christ still has scars on his hands, right?" And I remember I was just sitting there with my students, and I put up my hand, "Say that again." And I scribbled down on a piece of paper, "My king has got scars on his hands." And then I put "must sing."
Yeah.
And that restarted my songwriting engine. And partly because I had been so scarred myself in a different way, obviously, than Christ, but relational betrayal, all the confusion, and even some of the pain of being a parent of two special needs sons, and which felt very, very different than the promise that we had felt God had given us when they were born, and all these things. And my king has got scars, like, in his resurrection, in his healing, so to speak, that wasn't erased. It wasn't removed. And it gave me permission to be me, even the new me, on the other side of this hurt and pain. And so I wrote this song called Scars in His Hands, very simple song. I spent months agonizing over it. But by the time I finished that, I wrote, Grateful for Another Day. I wrote First Love. I wrote The World Turns. I wrote, and a song that I sing often now called Everlasting Arms, which was a song of comfort for a couple who had been deeply betrayed in business. And they didn't know what to do, and they were suffering deeply. And I wrote Underneath All Things, so it was enough to restart my songwriting engine. And then, I mean, if you had asked my wife, Joyce, well, ever since, I haven't been able to shut him up. Like, he just keeps on writing songs. And I mean, part of it is like,
wow.
I have a rhythm and a discipline, I have a weekly songwriting appointment with myself that other people can't, book. I have a 3-hour block where I walk in with my notebook, and I walk over to the piano, and what's today, Lord? Like, what's, and sometimes I come with a seed from, I was hearing somebody talk the other day and I heard this phrase and I thought we should sing that. Or I come in with nothing and I just wait. And then I just let my hands fall on the piano and see what happens. And almost without exception, something starts, which is how I ended up writing 40 love songs. I've written all these new worship songs that nobody's heard. And I'm trying to figure out, what do I do with all of this? So I'm just doing it. I'm just doing it. I'll never forget that season of wordlessness.
Yeah.
It's part of my story. It's one of, if you look at, a tree with all of its rings and you can see where there's a fire, in an old tree, if you cut it, you could see, it's like I went through a different kind of fire.
Yes, definitely.
And it refined me in a different way, I think, even than the fire that I went through as a young man.
Yeah. It's interesting, we were talking about worship as being that love and praise, adoration, gratitude, but there's also a place for lament in worship as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Psalms show us that. And as I go out and I do workshops, I'll ask worship leaders, several hundred of them in the room, how many of you have sung a lament in the last year? And almost nobody raises their hand.
Oh, wow.
And I think, what does that do to the suffering people? Obviously, the goal is not to wallow, but the goal is actually to pass through and to transform our pain ultimately into praise. But you have to be honest, and it's actually funny. One of the reasons why I loved the Pixar Inside Out film, and both of them, because they demonstrate how it actually works in a human being with our different emotions, and how and who was it? Brené Brown talked about how if you try and selectively numb your hard emotions like sadness, you're going to be numbing your joy too, right? In other words, you can't selectively numb emotion.
Right.
You have to. So the Psalms, of course, knew that 3,000 years ago, right? That's why you can go from these really highs to these crazy lows and everything in between from Psalm to Psalm, and it's not flattened out.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes when I look at the, let's just call it CCLI top 100 songs being sung in churches, it's kind of flattened out, right? And they try for some of the real highs through intensity, but if you're not willing to express some of the lows, how long, O Lord, will you forget me forever?
Yeah.
Psalm 13, which of course Psalm 13 is such, and I've done a setting of it. It's so beautiful because it expresses the pain, the honesty, and then it passes through to "But I trust." And when the psalmist. And you think about these Psalms, they were hammered out over generations, okay? In an oral culture where there wasn't even books, okay? So you think after generation passed these songs down and they learned them and then they probably changed them and added, but they never went back and edited out the beginning, dark part, the difficult part, just because they arrived at a place of trust and praise again. They kept that as part of the record, this is part of the song. This is the part that stays in the backup hard drive, because guess what? Everybody's going to feel forgotten at some point. Everybody's going to feel confused. And they need a melody. They need some words that can say that then, because then they can get through to that place of, the reason why we lament is because we trust and hope that that's not the end of the story. That's different, I think, than like the blues. Exactly. Or I think of some,
depression.
Mainstream music that just can wallow in certain things and doesn't take you anywhere.
Right. Yeah.
Biblical lament takes you somewhere.
Yeah.
It takes you to your maker, and our maker understands.
Yeah. It's like turning our eyes, even though they're downcast, to almost forcibly turn them upward, through that pouring out, so that they can be cast
Yeah.
in a direction that our help comes from.
Yeah. Yeah. I have one of my new songs that I did one time and then I got immediate request for it. It's just called Are You There? And, it was written not just for my voice, but for other people who literally are going through things and they've experienced presence before and now are in a season where they don't. Yeah. And that's the question.
Where
are you there?
Yeah.
How is it that I experienced that presence in the past and now I'm in this season where I can't taste it, I can't feel it. And we need songs for all of those moments in our life.
Yes, definitely. I was wondering, in the songs that the Lord has been giving you, how it almost sounds like, with your time of sitting down at the piano each week, it almost reminded me of Dennis Jernigan used to always say that he wasn't a songwriter, that he was a song receiver. He felt as though he just would sit at the piano and then these songs would come to him almost or pour out of him as a result of what was being poured in, and it kind of sounds like that might be how you would describe some of your...
the only thing that I would say is sometimes when I teach songwriters is they'll say, oh, God gave me the song, and then they play me the song and it's not very good. So the way I describe it is like I say, God gives us seeds and then we respond to that seed. And I said, what happens to the seed depends upon the quality of soil into which the seed falls and how well it's tended, how well it's gardened. So I always think this is a divine human partnership. And I understand what Dennis is describing. Like you can have these moments where you come and you present yourself and all of a sudden it's like the song feels like it starts playing itself almost, like it just starts coming to you quickly and it's just like flowing through you and I've experienced that. It's just that in the end, whether it's hard or easy, it is going to sound like you, the writer.
Right.
You can't obliterate your personality.
We are not, shouldn't.
Yeah, because, we are not, like I remember some of the prophets years ago talked about, well, God's raising up a nameless and faceless generation. And I remember thinking, well, I get the humble part of that. But as a father, do I want any of my daughters or sons to be nameless and faceless?
Yeah.
This isn't like just an impersonal force.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like it's not like, this isn't about being used. You know how we talk about, Lord, use me. And then sometimes I kind of go as a parent, I go, sometimes that language, we got to be careful. Like God doesn't want to use us in some kind of anonymous way. I think God wants to have fellowship with us. I think it's about, again, coming back to the beginning, we talked about these moments of presence, these moments of hearing the whispers. They're never, I don't think anyway, my opinion, they're not like power over.
Yeah.
They're invitation with. It's like, that's why eventually I, for the 35th anniversary of Refiner's Fire, I changed the word master to maker, because as I walked with my Black friends and my Native friends and all these people who've experienced power over colonization, power over all of these things, I go, the divine as revealed in Jesus and in Scripture is very, very seldom power over. It's power under. It's power with. It's presence with. So, so now I sing, for you, my maker, ready to do your will. What am I designed to do as a human being? Oh, I'm designed to love. Oh, I'm designed to serve. Oh, I'm designed to care, for others. And of course, having special needs sons has so underlined that for me in my life. I don't know, like, what would I be as a songwriter, as a worship leader without them? I can't write that story. It's not mine to write. All I know is that this is the journey I'm on, and this is the gifts that God gave me in my sons. And it's hard sometimes when I can't have a conversation with them. It's hard when I think of what will happen to them after Joyce and I are gone and I'm not there to care for Isaiah. But that's my path of trust. I have to just trust and then carry on.
Yeah. Amen. I think what I appreciate too about the fact that you are a worship leader who writes songs is how I would describe you. Because I remember back in the early 2000s, I got a copy of Hungry. And I know that you weren't leading in that or anything, but you produced that CD.
I was on the stage and I was co-leading that whole night. I was just taking it more and more. It was my second project in the Vineyard UK. My first one was Come Now's the Time. In America, it was called Winds of Worship 12, live from London.
Yes.
And then Hungry was the first one that they named that consistently worldwide. But yeah, no, we was like a team, a worship team with multiple leaders. And I was both guiding the arrangement. I was on stage. I led a couple of songs, but I was primarily backing off, letting Brenton Brown lead, letting Catherine Scott, letting these other people, Michael Fry, and these other ones just lead. And
well, what I appreciated about that is it was introduced to me at a time in my life where we were moving from Texas, felt called to come to Washington State, leaving our home church, coming up here to who knows what. We didn't know why we were coming, just knew God had called us, called my husband. And so there was this disconnect between my worship experience to coming to a place where I was not finding that same place of worship. And Hungry was introduced to me. And I remember that became my soundtrack for worship because I couldn't find it in any of the local churches where we were visiting, but I could find it there. And that was like a lifeline for me, as to have someone leading me into worship. And to me, that would be the ultimate of any CD project, to have that where songs are written or are produced in such a way that you're leading the listener. They're not just you're not just listening to a performance of a song, but it's an opportunity to come into worship and to be led into worship.
Well, it's the whole speaking for again, so that it becomes something that other people can say, oh, that's what I wanted to say and sing, and before they know it, they're singing along, or they're even, or just in their heart, maybe. Sometimes, I can hear something and I don't even have to sing along. I can just close my eyes and my heart goes there. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like I'm just with that person.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I just want to thank you for that, because it truly was a lifeline. I felt the feeling of being so disconnected from the body of Christ, and yet I could find it when I put that CD.
And that's the miracle and the thing for I've experienced over the years is that kind of fellowship, that no matter where I am, whether it's some recorded music or then getting to be with people in person and having that experience together, it's like it's an incredible gift. The world is a crazy place and there's so much hard things, and yet we always have that place, right? That we can come to, that safe place where we can be with our Maker, and the few songs can say what our hearts are longing to say. And loved people love people, and then the beautiful thing about that is then we can take that love And then we can turn around to our families and to our neighbors and to our communities and just genuinely love people because we were loved.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And because have experienced that place of unconditional love, that,
Yeah.
I mean, it's one thing that I can be kind and even serve in a sense of to try to help someone, but sometimes that's not the best expression of love. Sometimes it is maybe providing more of a kick in the pants, or I mean, just because I know the Lord has had to kick me in the pants sometimes to get my attention back where it needs to be, or and that is his expression of love just as much as those feelings of feeling secured and embraced. And sometimes I'm always so amazed at how in the Psalms even David was saying, "Oh, your correction. I love your discipline." And I remember as a young Christian going, "What? I don't think I could ever say that." But as an older Christian, I so get it. I go, "Oh, Lord, yes. I love your discipline. I love your correction, because that is what's bringing life to me. That's what's killing the flesh in me and bringing that spiritual woman alive." And so whatever it happens to be musically that helps me experience all that God is,
I sing about that in Light the Fire Again.
Yes, exactly.
Which is based on the letter to the church in Laodicea from the book of Revelation. Yes. And that's, I wrote that song because we were doing a weekend. I was conference, and they said, the theme passage for the conference is the letter to the church of Laodicea. And I thought to myself, back up hard drive. If we don't sing it, we won't remember it. Yes. So I thought, I'll just write a little song that we can sing that weekend so we remember what we're talking about, and then that'll be done. Wow. And it just, anyway.
Yeah, that did not remain just a little song for that conference.
Are we needing to wrap up?
I think your wife's back.
Yes, we're getting to that point.
I know. I hate it because I still have so many other songs I'm thinking of that in fact, okay, we'll end with this question. I don't even know if you can answer it, but we're going to shoot for it. Do you have a song that you have written that speaks to you more, or shares your heart, or touches you in a way? I mean, of all the hundreds of songs.
Oh my God. It's hard. You're right. It is hard. And I get asked sometimes, what's your favorite song you've ever written? And actually to rip off Bono from U2, I say, well, I haven't written it yet. You know what I mean? Like so that's partly, as a songwriter, I just keep on leaning into hoping that there's more to come.
Yeah.
But when I reflect on, the journey so far, a couple of songs that come to mind, one of the early ones, Faithful One, is definitely there because I was a first-time dad. I was 23, and we had our first daughter, and I was like overwhelmed with joy and overwhelmed with terror that I would let her down. And so I started praying, God, like, you have to be faithful, because I know in some ways I won't be, but I want to be. Would you be the faithful one? And I picked up my guitar and just started singing Faithful One, so unchanging. And then some of the stories of where that song has gone. I mean, how countless stories of people who have sung loved ones through the veil of death with that song, or people being shipwrecked and in the ocean for a couple of days, floating on debris, and just singing that song to keep their hope up. And so again, it was very personal for me.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. Like, and then it became personal for other people. Everlasting Arms is a more recent one that has really touched my heart, because I was praying for some dear friends who were going through a hellish season of betrayal and unjust suffering. And I started to think what they needed. And then I just started to sing, we don't know when the storm is going to break, but underneath all things, or the everlasting arms. We don't know how much more our hearts can take.
Yes.
But underneath, and now it's my dad who's 88. We lost my mom a number of years ago, but he says to me, Brian, that's one of my favorite songs ever. It just brings him comfort, and I sing in the bridge there, just when I thought life was over, just when I felt like love was gone, underneath all things, it's that feeling like all of a sudden we can get to this point where we think we're done, where there's nothing left, and then underneath all things, so something can happen, whether it's in the natural world, or somebody can do something, and all of a sudden through that can come an expression of the everlasting love, that presence, so and then a song, I'll just say one more. I'll just throw in one more. It's called When You Shepherd Me. I did a new version of it at the beginning of COVID for on an EP called Everlasting Arms, actually. And we did a brand new recording of it, which is really special to me. And the 23rd Psalm is just a well that never runs dry.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
So I it's my setting of singing. How do I sing? I am overwhelmed by love, overtaken by your mercy. Lord, your goodness without end will be the house in which I dwell. When you shepherd me, it just never gets old.
Yeah.
So yeah, those would be a couple that. And then I've got a whole bunch that I'm just bubbling with that I could say names of, and you would have, I've never heard that. I've never heard that one. So who knows what the next chapter will bring. But
well, I was going to ask you if you had any upcoming projects that you're excited about, but we've kind of already covered that.
Yeah. The Love Songs one is really, Joyce has already told me it's going to be her favorite album of mine. Kind of figures.
Yeah.
And then, I'm just writing and grateful for the season of life. Seeing what comes.
So how can we be praying for you? How can our listeners be
Well, there are, there's lots of, challenges, doing this kind of work. And, I go out and I do some touring, and I think to myself, I'm not getting any younger. So, sometimes my body pays the price and stuff. So just for physical health, for spiritual health, relational health. And if people want to stay in touch, they just go to briandoerksen.com. They can sign up for a newsletter. We send out, occasional updates. Hey, we're working on this. Oh, please join us in praying for this. And then they hear directly from me. So that's another option, but yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
I have enjoyed this thoroughly, and I think I could talk the rest of the day or asking questions. And
well, we can always do a continuation at some point.
We
I don't live that far away.
I know you don't live that far away.
I'm about an hour and a half-ish from here.
So we just might snag you more than once a year. But I so appreciate you in so many levels. But I just want to encourage our listeners this weekend to go and to search out these songs, especially your favorite ones or the ones that you shared here, but to search out music, even maybe songs you haven't heard recently or you don't know, and you just might find a new favorite.
Yeah.
Because you have a wealth of them. And also Brian has been very gracious to give us some CDs to give away. So we will be working on that and seeing how we can have some of those little treasures be passed on to our listeners. And thank you again. And Lord bless you and continue to bless you as you find those words for us little people out here who have who can't find words of our own. It's such a gift, and we're so grateful. So Lord
You're
bless.
welcome. Glad to be with you.